Hey there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to another Red Pill Religion podcast. Red Pill Religion, where amongst the things we say are that social justice art, so called, sucks. Not that everything social justice is never any good, but good gracious. So much of what's out there now is completely ideological rather than enjoyable entertainment and fun. And we're going to talk about work that's not like that tonight. So please, if you like the kind of content we make here, please support our work on redpillreligion.com. Remember that redpillreligion.com, in these days of social media censorship, is the most reliable way to find us. We are on our third YouTube channel. We're still, between work and other projects, still looking at moving to maybe a more reliable platform. But in the meantime, if you like the work we're turning out, challenging dominant cultural narratives and challenging ideologues wherever you find them, please drop a tip, if you will, in the PayPal tip jar on redpillreligion.com, or drop us some Bitcoin. We always appreciate that. We are available on Patreon, even though that platform's got problems. Scroll down on the redpillreligion.com page. We also have mugs, t-shirts, and artwork for sale on the right-hand side, and we're going to have direct links to that fairly soon. Also, we are available on Subscribestar. We would really appreciate it if you'd join us on Subscribestar. It seems to be a much better platform. We're getting a lot of good feedback from it. They seem to have gotten past a lot of the hijinks that they were getting from financing and banks and such. Seems like a good platform. We're willing to go with it. We'd love you to join us there. You can also find us on Gab, Minds, Facebook, a little bit on MeWe even, and of course on redpillreligion.com. Also, you can join our free chat room for now. We will eventually be closing that to the public and making it members only, but right now, people who just want to come in and not be dorks and talk about history, science, philosophy, science fiction, geek stuff, conspiracy theories. We have fun discussing all of it, so you're always welcome. It's mostly a boys' club, but girls who like to hang with the boys are welcome too. Now, tonight, I'm happy to say and honored to say we have as our guest one Declan Finn. We've had him on once or twice before. Declan Finn, who runs DeclanFinn.com, a blog called A Pius Geek, and is the author of many science fiction novels. Say hi to everybody, Pius Geek.
Hello, everybody.
So, Declan, you've been a science fiction writer for how many years?
Well, I've been writing science fiction for the last 20 years. I've only been publishing it for the last 7.
But you've gotten good notices and have a good fan base. I see one of your most popular, or I seem to recall you told me this before, one of your most popular was a vampire series. So you write fantasy too, right?
Mostly urban fantasy, although lately I found my urban fantasy became really dark. So we wound up labeling the current series part urban fantasy and part horror.
Well, that's fair enough. It might not even be right to call you a science fiction writer because you write in multiple genres, don't you? Although I think, like a lot of nerds, you may think of yourself as a science fiction guy first.
I write in whatever genre my publisher says, hey, we need a story in X genre. Pick one. So I pick one.
Oh, fair enough. So I understand you've got a new series out, and we definitely want to help you promote that and tell people about it. I see you have a book. You have a 3-part series, actually. The first in the series is called Hellspawn, and I'm showing it on the screen. And of course, we have links to it in the low bar, and we'll have that on redpillreligion.com. And it's part of a series called St. Tommy NYPD, right?
Yep.
Well, why don't you go ahead and tell us what St. Tommy NYPD, what the series is all about?
Well, it's pretty much what it says on the label, because I got the idea for this when I was an undergraduate taking a course on Christian spirituality and mysticism, where the professor one day started talking about the various charisms, peripheral abilities of mystics, saints, like bilocation, the ability to smell evil, and I had this random thought of, gee, wouldn't that be nice for a cop to have? And so I basically started developing a character with superpowers, only he's a saint. And then it's, you know what? All saints are dead. Wouldn't that be an interesting line? And fast forward to 2 years ago when my publisher at Silver Empire, Russell Newquist, he's been a guest on your show before.
Yeah,
said,
Russ is a great guy.
Yeah. He said, I'm looking for a new urban fantasy series. Pitch me something. And I pitched him 3 things, and the only thing I had for what became Saint Tommy is my name is Thomas Nolan, and I am a saint. And of course, the only bad guy you can put up against a police officer who is going to become a saint is a serial killer possessed by a demon. And I was off to the races.
All right, now wait a minute. Let me make sure that the audience understands what you're saying. You're saying your cop is a saint, and by that you mean a Christian saint, a Catholic saint, or what we might call an Orthodox Christian saint. These are people that within that type of Christianity, it's believed that certain people go right to heaven, and most people don't. But certain people go right to heaven, and they're saints here on earth, more or less. And then, of course, everybody who's in purgatory or the in-between time goes there. But in the stories of the Christian religion, going back the last 2,000 years, we have all these people who've appeared in history that are called saints, and I don't know if they'd be if people would be cool with you referring to it as powers, but I mean, one of the things that happens with saints is that they are usually have multiple miracles associated with them, and sometimes actually, no, you're right. You do have stories of saints, don't you, who could do things like fly or teleport. We have had tales of saints in history who could do those things, even in fairly recent history, haven't we?
Oh, yes. Hey, St. Joseph of Cupertino, patron saint of pilots, because he was known for levitating. Although I always preferred St. Thomas Aquinas, who levitated during the Eucharist. And it's like, he's about 300 pounds. Nobody wants to be near him if he falls suddenly.
So basically, what you've got is a Christian New York detective, I assume, and
Yep.
huh?
Correct.
And he's a real serious Christian. I assume he's a real serious Catholic. He would have to be just about. And he has powers, more or less, that God has granted him, or abilities God has granted him.
Oh, yes. And I have plenty of fun with, since he doesn't like to brag, he tries to avoid telling people about this stuff. And I love to drive him crazy because people automatically say, "Oh, so you're a saint. This makes sense." And he comes close to tearing his hair out because, one, I can't be a saint. I'm still alive. And followed shortly thereafter by, what do you mean it makes sense? Why does everybody say that? Like, have you met you? So,
Now, I got to say, from one thing I do understand, though, and that is funny, one thing I do understand, though, is it's usually a person who was a saint wouldn't claim to be one. It seems like an arrogant claim.
he doesn't say it. Whenever somebody has caught him out, like, oh, a civilian who has caught him out with, gee, you were bilocating during that firefight. That's a cute trick. And he tries to work around it. He goes into long lists of explanations. And everybody else calls him a saint. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. It's like, oh, so you're a wonder worker. Yeah, I guess that's better. Not much, but I guess that's better. I drive him crazy because on the one hand, he wants to be humble and modest. On the other hand, it's, yeah, I do stuff only people who have been listed as saints can do. How do I downplay this?
Well,
So,
he could lose it by sinning, couldn't he?
oh, yes, he could. And that's actually one of the things I keep trying to slip in every once in a while to throw temptation at him because, well, let's face it, we've had some saints. I've seen some while looking up charisms, which are these powers and strange powers and abilities.
The talents that God grants people, right?
Yes. One of the charisms is, utter invincibility. It's like, okay, have to work my way around that one. But spiritual threats to him, I try to make as big as some of the physical threats. And well, let's just say I put this guy through the ringer.
Yeah, yeah. So in the first book, it's Hellspawn book 1, and then there's 2 others in the series. How many are going to be in the series, or is it a 3-parter and that's it?
It's actually going up to book 6. It's outlined up to that so far. Um, the first 3 books are New York, and the second 3 books I keep referring to as Saint Tommy Abroad for complicated plot reasons.
Ah,
And, well, like I said, I have it outlined up to book 6. If I had known I'd get up to this far, I would have tried to make each one about a 7 deadly sins and try to get it up to book 7, but I didn't think that far in advance.
well, hey, that's the way writing goes, right? It looks like reader response has been pretty good. You got a ton of positive reviews, especially on the first in the series.
Oh, oh yes. And now the second one is weird. All right, the second book of every series is strange because I've had it with my books. My friend John Delarose and Daniel Humphrey have also had it where it's, yeah, we've released 3 books, and for some reason everyone ignores book 2. So it's odd, but it happens a lot. But no, book 1 has done very well. The only people who haven't liked book 1 have been, let's just say, I don't think they're people who would have liked anything that's pro-Catholic.
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. And there's some people who just don't like you no matter what you do, right? But this is actually cool to see because, well, even if you're not Catholic or any kind of Orthodox Christian or Christian at all, you ought to be interested in this. Oh, shall we dare call it a mythos, as atheists might like to say, or a mythology. Now, we don't accept that it's mythology necessarily, that these things are real, but what I find, although you do find religion generally treated favorably in some fiction and some of what you see in Hollywood, like they did a pretty good job on the Daredevil series, at least what I saw of it, of portraying the Daredevil as a faithful Catholic, more or less. They seem to do that right, although usually Hollywood and the mainstream press just, the trades, they just they're either bad on religion or they're extremely negative on religion, and they think that makes them cutting edge and exciting. And it's like, I think that was cutting edge and exciting in the 90s, maybe, early 2000s, maybe, but now it's getting bored. And I have a sense that there's a real thirst out there in audiences for fiction that doesn't take the materialist, rationalist perspective, so-called rationalist perspective, and that doesn't treat religion like the enemy, or it's like it's an unalloyed evil. I think there's a real thirst for that because there's about as many religious people as there ever have been in the United States, despite what you may have heard. I mean, are you finding that your fan response looks like that too?
Oh, pretty much. And heck, a lot of people enjoy that it's not strictly Christian fiction, which
Right?
I've had hit or miss. I personally have had hit or miss experience with in terms of, okay, you have made an entire story that is now message fiction, or just plain, okay, this is awesome. Yeah, I could see it's Catholic, but it's not too in your face. So it's either one or the other, and there's very few that try to go straight down the middle. In my case, I don't know if I'm doing in your face or what, but it really depends on reader reaction.
Um, well, what's it? I'm trying to think what else I would ask. We have somebody in the comments, but they're asking off topic comments. Um,
Okay, I do not see any comments, so I can't even pick or choose them. But hey, no, I actually had quite a bit of fun with Hellspawn. I don't know. Should I be doing spoilers on this one? It's not a major one, but
go ahead, tell us a little. Make us want to read it. What's
okay.
going to happen in there?
Well, I did. Okay. When I was in high school, I did a lot of research into serial killers including reading several books from people they base off of on television shows. John Douglas, FBI, and I took everything I knew about demons because I had read several books on the subject at the time. Deliver Us from Evil, a Catholic cop who deals with demons and infestations, or Father Amorth, an exorcist tells his story. I'm not sure if you're familiar with any of them. The Rite, a book that came out about 10 years ago.
Oh, I'm familiar with Father Gabriel Amorth. He was the Vatican's chief exorcist until he died a couple of years ago. He passed a couple of years ago.
Yes, and he has some very interesting stories. And of course, I had to take a lot of liberties since, well, most demons don't like to make a show of themselves. That's for movies like The Exorcist. And I decided, okay, well, since in most cases, demons aren't going to possess you unless you are seriously open to it. Okay, fine, serial killer should be open to this sort of thing. And I took, all right, it's fairly messy, so it was the murders are fairly messy. I try to skip over a lot of the gore because I find it boring. God knows what most of my audience will feel like. And so I describe the killing, and everyone around it is going, this sounds very familiar. Because I had actually taken it from a medical procedure. Um, and most people refer to it as partial birth abortion, only on a fully grown human being. And I did some background.
Hey, wait a minute. You had about a partial birth abortion on a fully grown human being? What?
Yeah. No, it's disarticulation and dismemberment. So, like I said, it was fairly gruesome. And
Oh.
and a lot of the reviewers are going, you managed to handle this in a way that didn't turn me off. Congratulations. Like, thank you. And of course, the 1-star reviews apparently skimmed until they were offended, stopped right there, and then went off for ever and ever.
It is hilarious how some people do that.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, you guys objected to a whole 4 pages of background material, which basically fed into a psychosis diagnosis? Are you guys stupid? Answer: yes, they really are. You should read some of these reviews. They are hilariously bad.
I'm always interested in that. There used to be a phenomenon that seems to be dying out, and I have several theories as to why. But it used to be that if you had politically annoyed somebody for whatever reason, either for just existing as the wrong sort of Christian, like a religious man or whatever, or having the wrong views on race or gender or any of that, you could get hit. And literally, there used to be this phenomenon. I think it's still alive, called the Goodreads bullies and the Amazon bullies, who just come in and give bad reviews to you. That happened to me more than once, at least, in the one novel I ever published, and gang downvotes, gang bad reviews from people who obviously really hadn't read it or hadn't read it at all, just didn't like you. Amazon's cleaned that up a little bit, but there seems to be a contingent of people who still do that. They don't like you religiously or politically or in some other fashion, and that's all she wrote. And they go and they come in and they write these reviews. Sometimes they'll do it in gangs, but that seems to have petered out. I think because of a lot of complaints about that to Amazon and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, in my personal case, I haven't been swarmed with them. There are just enough to make it entertaining. And when I say entertaining, I mean, wow, you guys really should learn to fake spelling. What was English your 5th language or your 6th? Or did you just type this into Google Translate? No, I mean, some of these are bad, and I love them. They are hilarious to read because it's like, wow, you just kept reading, you hit one word, and you stopped dead. I know you didn't even finish the book. Nice going.
Exactly. I wonder, have you noticed the difference between your, like, let's say readers who are Catholic readers who are not Catholic, but maybe some kind of Christian, or readers who are not religious. I assume you have some of each kind of reader.
Oh, I have some of each kind of reader. I have Jewish readers, I have Protestant readers, I have Catholic readers. The only ones who seem to have any kind of problem are the anti-theist radical secularists.
Yeah.
And it's especially hilarious when somebody is writing a fake review, and you can tell it's fake because they start with, "Oh, I was so happy to read a story about a good Catholic family man, but how dare he object to abortion?" It's like, wait, what? Did you even read what you wrote? Like, dude, 3 pages, 3 pages, get it over 200, and this is your biggest complaint? Or what stupid pills are you taking? And can you try not to contradict yourself within your own review?
And I think with a lot of this, it's just we saw, just like we've seen I'll just rant here a bit, but what we have seen over the last 10, 15 years is a push of anti-Christianity and anti-religion in Hollywood, in publishing, and etc. And for the longest time, we saw basically every year it was more and more extreme anti-religiosity, extreme violence, extreme sex, extreme boundary pushing in every direction. And every time you had something like this, whether it was 50 Shades of Grey or just more and more pornification, more and more graphic violence, more and more nihilism, more and more sort of Nietzschean Superman overcoming and conquering and the will to power and all that. And at some point, that can make for interesting fiction. Truly, it can. I also think we've run out of the interesting things you can do with that quite some time ago. And audiences are getting bored. And they don't necessarily want fantasy with, unicorns and people shooting lightning out of their fingers, although that's not bad either, necessarily, because that's fun. But I think the spiritual element is so obviously part of human nature and human psychology. You can't you try and indoctrinate religion out of kids, they become spiritual anyway. You try and suppress religion in any culture, and it always just goes underground but keeps going. And I think one of the reasons that most of they call them the trade publishers, the mainstream publishers, as well as Hollywood and even the video game industry, they're all flagging badly. And it's not just that it's so often a social justice message or a feminist message, but it's always this same nihilistic, anti-spiritual, anti-God, anti-religion, anti-religious people mentality. And I don't know, maybe you're seeing this, but would you agree? It seems to be cracking. People are getting tired of it, and they want something else.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you on it for the simple reason that you look at how traditional publishing, is getting its ass kicked by independents, and a lot of independents are either some flavor of conservative-ish, some flavor of religious, and the independent publishers are getting a bigger and bigger share of the market. Now, granted, number one is still romance last time I checked, but following close behind it is science fiction and fantasy. So not only is everyone getting tired of the nihilism of trad pub, you've got a lot of people trending anywhere else just to get something religious, faithful, not nihilistic. Heck, I'm not sure if you are familiar, since I don't know what Twitter circles you run in, but there is a bit of a writing circle called the Pulp Revolution that they're trying to bring back every traditional science fiction or fantasy motif, theme from the 20s and 30s when way back when, gee, you could have Christianity mentioned in a fantasy story and nobody bats an eye because it's in the stories of A.M. Merritt or Edgar Rice Burroughs et al. And yeah, you can see just how much people thirst for it. They're thirsting for it so much, they're going back to the 20s, 30s, 40s, and before just to get some. Okay, that was bad phrasing on my part, but you understand what I mean.
No, I do understand exactly what you mean. You saying, and I know I've observed this myself. Even young people, not just old people who remember from their youth and are nostalgic, but I mean young people going, "I want something." Oh, this old Tarzan or this old John Carter, Warlord of Mars, is cool, or this old Edgar Rice Burroughs is cool. This old, or even Orson Welles was cool. Um, and Pulp Fiction from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Some of it is rock solid and still rocking great to read today, isn't it?
Oh, heck yes. And
Uh,
even better, a lot of it is free. You can just go to Gutenberg, the Gutenberg Press, Gutenberg Archives, the website, the Gutenberg Project. That's it.
oh, Project Gutenberg. I might as well pull that up too. Project Gutenberg is cool for readers. Being all ADHD as I am on streams, but that's fine. Project Gutenberg is something that readers, people who like to read, especially cool stuff or free stuff, should check it out. There's an official site for it. Why is my, oh, there we go, Gutenberg.org, Gutenberg.org. And there are a ton of free books in here, more than I can even count. You can get a lot of G.K. Chesterton on here. You can get a lot of Edgar Rice Burroughs on here. By the way, if you like murder mysteries, Father Brown Mysteries by G.K. Chesterton, everybody, are really, really good.
Amen.
And so is most of anything by Chesterton. But I mean, there's tons of great authors on here, aren't they? And there's more being added all the time.
Oh, heck yes.
And I would also think this is a great resource for anybody who's working on their own fiction. Because, even though I've only ever written or published the one novel, and it didn't do that well, but that's okay. I enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. But everything I've seen on how to write says one of the first things a fiction writer needs to do is do a whole lot of reading.
Oh, amen. That's pretty much every even rule of a writer. Rule 1, have good set hours so you have a process. Step 2, read. Book 3, rule 3, try to outline when you can. Rule 4, read.
Yeah, because I mean, you as a writer, and this is something I've noticed, is that if you study how other writers do things, not just their language style, although that too can be useful, but like literally how they construct their stories, how they construct or introduce their plot twists, how they lead the reader, how do they subvert reader expectations, if they do it all, which you almost have to subvert the reader's expectations sometimes or you're boring. How they do these things all can give you insights into how you do stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely. Heck, I learned to read I learned to write by dissecting Babylon 5 and reading everything I could by the creator. Well, Babylon 5, for those of you who don't know, was a 90s sci-fi show that was basically space opera on TV. That's the anti-Star Trek.
What was the anti-Star Trek?
Babylon 5?
Do you feel that it was?
Well, it was definitely the anti-Star Trek to what was going on. It's like, okay, we're going to have science fiction military as opposed to, oh, we're just space explorers. You're space explorers with torpedoes and lasers.
Yeah, that's what Star Trek was. In fact, I would have to say with Star Trek, you almost have to just admit it, even though I'm an old fan since I was a child, right? I've seen every series completely. Well, I don't think I ever saw every cartoon, but I saw almost every cartoon. And Star Trek always had this tension within it that Babylon 5 didn't pretend to have, which is that Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, insisted that Starfleet and the Enterprise were not military at all. They were just inquirers and explorers. So even though they wore uniforms and called each other sir and stood at attention and carried weapons and shot phasers and photon torpedoes at people, this is in no way a military operation. It was a conceit of Gene Roddenberry, and it is a conceit of the entire Star Trek franchise that they're not military, when they obviously are. And I say that as an old Star Trek fan. So I do see what you're saying there about Babylon 5. Babylon 5 didn't try that pretense, did it?
Yes, and it was the first science fiction show, in my experience, that actually had religion on board. The first commander of the station was trained by Jesuits, and old school Jesuits from what he talked about. By season 3, we had an entire collection of, they were either Trappists or Dominicans, because the people who dressed them obviously didn't know what they were dressing from day to day. Because one week it was, okay, they have the black and white of the Dominicans. The next week they have brown robes like Trappists. Flip a coin and pick one. But still, it's, wait, and we've got Catholics on this station. They even did a straight to DVD movie some 10 years ago. And half the story was about the exorcism on a space station with an actual demon. And
they do that on Babylon 5? You know what? Maybe I really should go back and watch Babylon 5. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I never could get into the show, so I never dug into it.
The first season was very slow, and it was, they were doing a very slow build up, and I appreciated parts of it because I had no idea where the hell it was going. Season 2, they sped it up a lot. Part of it was because they swapped the lead captain. First season was a relative nobody, and the captain for seasons 2 through 5 was Bruce Boxleitner of Tron fame.
Right. And the show Babylon 5 still has its die-hard fans. It really does.
Oh, it definitely does. So much so that they've been talking about bringing it back. The creator has been talking about bringing it back for the last few years. Unfortunately, given some of the hit or miss stuff I've seen, it's like, okay, am I supposed to be enthusiastic or terrified? But we'll see if anything comes from that period.
Yeah. But Babylon 5 does wind up being a good reference then, because even then audiences appreciated Babylon 5, and they weren't afraid of the spiritual. You know what else? Huh?
Absolutely. And hell, I will even mention that one of the reasons it inspired me was, wait, we've got science fiction, we're in outer space, we're in deep outer space, and we've got priests. I'll take it. And just one of the space opera, it brought me into space opera, and in a few months I'm going to have a space opera released, and part of it is space missionaries.
See, if we ever did go into space and explore space like that, that sort of thing would be normal. It really would.
Oh, absolutely.
Because religiosity is normal in humans, and every attempt that anybody's made to stamp it out has been oppressive and failed.
Oh, and one of the things that's going to happen that was the main glaring oversight on the USS Enterprise. Where's the chaplain?
Yes, in fact, yes. Let's talk a little more about Star Trek 2. For anybody who hasn't caught on, whether you're a Star Trek fan or not, a very strong secular mentality pervaded most of Star Trek and has pervaded Star Trek, because that's the way Gene Roddenberry was. He was an atheist. He didn't like religion, although he was not as hostile to it as people today have been indoctrinated to be so hostile to it. But he had this conceit that there was nothing military, and they were not religious of any way. People weren't religious anymore. They didn't mean that anymore. But it kept creeping back in the show. And actually, if you watch Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, at least toward the last few seasons, they did start treating religion and spirituality a little more seriously. A little clumsily, but mostly pretty seriously. And you know another series that did that? I think this is something writers should be thinking about, because really, religious people aren't going away. Battlestar Galactica was another fabulous Star Trek science fiction series. And by this one, I mean the reimagined one, headed by Ronald D. Moore, that was done in the early to mid 2000s. That's actually an extraordinarily religious show. Although one of the things I dig about it is that the way they shot it and the way they did it, at least during the early on, it was never clear. Like, they would leave it open. They would leave it like, are the religious people crazy when they're talking about God and destiny and all these things, or is it true? And I know that a lot of atheist fans, especially, were upset at the end of the the reboot series of Battlestar Galactica, because at the end they make it very clear that no, yes, God was involved in everything going on, and there really were angels, and there really were spiritual forces at work throughout the entire series. The way they played it is that you could be in doubt about it for a while throughout the series, but by the time they got to the finale, there was just no doubt that the people who were talking about God were talking about God because God was involved. When people were talking about angels, it's because there were angels. And I liked that about Galactica. It took a lot of fans at the time a little time to just adjust and accept that that's how Ron Moore envisioned his universe. But that's one of the most successful and critically acclaimed series, science fiction series, that's ever been done by anyone. Some people don't like it. I don't know if you did. I utterly loved it. I was riveted by it.
I could not get past the pilot, especially.
Couldn't get past the pilot. Okay.
No, it's like, okay, you just spent 2 hours building up the entire society that you're going to blow up, and thanks, but no thanks. I'll go back and watch the original 70s show.
Oh, well, I will just tell you, you're missing something there, in my opinion. Maybe it's not your kind of show, but I think it was very successful, and it was very critically acclaimed, and its fans still love it for a reason. And it was actually a very spiritual show. I can't say it was perfect. It had its conceits and its, things you look at and go, okay, in retrospect, and go, okay, that didn't. But that's any series, right? It's actually a very good series with good acting and good directing. Very riveting. It keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire time. There's rarely a slow episode. I remember watching it. It's one of those shows you binge watch. You just sit down and say, okay, this weekend I'm going to just binge watch this whole thing. In fact, my wife and I did that when we first got married. We binge watched Battlestar Galactica over a weekend, and then she was like, "There's no more? There's no more?" So you may have missed something there, Declan, but I won't try and sell you on it. I think it still fits the theme, though. There's a lot of people who are writing who seem to think that to do so. I even had this mentality when I wrote my novel, Methuselah's Daughter. I had this mentality that religion was going away, that no one was religious anymore, that science had proven we had no need for God. We don't need to believe in that spiritual stuff anymore. I used to believe that, Hui, and the interesting thing is that idea that everything is just materialist science, that there's nothing spiritual, that there's nothing supernatural, that there's nothing we can't explain through material causes, through science, through psychology, and all that. Those are just assumptions. And if you go in writing your fiction, even if it's science fiction, if you go in writing your fiction with those assumptions, there's nothing transcendent, there's no God, there's no afterlife, everything is psychology, everything is explainable by material scientific means, you run out of places to go with your characters in your fiction very quickly.
To steal a line from, what was it? Oh, yes. Jim Butcher's Harry Dresden series. Harry Dresden being a wizard. After he blows a set of double, King Kong-sized doors right off their hinges, his next line is, what was it? Oh, yes. Sufficiently advanced technology, my ass. Which, okay, good. You got the line.
All right, that is a fan that science fiction. That is a line science fiction fans from old school should recognize. Arthur C. Clarke's ancient line was, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, which is probably true, or it's arguably true. But what was your responding line?
The line was from Harry Dresden, where, as a wizard, he's blowing stuff up, and his next line after that is sufficiently advanced technology, my ass.
Yeah, there you go. Right. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. If you accept that hypothesis, this means that you accept that anything you see that's out of the ordinary or unusual must have a technological explanation or some kind of material science explanation, rather than simply accepting the probably irrefutable reality that sometimes things happen that simply don't make sense according to anything we understand scientifically. And there's no justification for saying that secret aliens are hiding in the background doing it.
Oh, yes, and I would love to see some of these people who like to talk about there is only the material world. Okay, fine. I'd like to see you write an urban fantasy novel. I'll wait.
Yeah, yeah, you'll probably get a chuckle like, well, we can understand your fairy tales with your magic wands and stuff. But see, again, that's just showing somebody who hasn't thought through the human experience or human or reality very well. I really do think most atheist art winds up sucking because they wind up in this reductionist, materialist worldview. So what do you got left to play with? You got sex, you got drugs, you got violence, you got romance, sort of, although the romance will mostly be about the sex. And what else? You're done. You can't think of anything. When you think of these grand technological invention ideas that may or may not be real or may or may not work, but I really do believe it squeezes out the human element, much of the human experience, the way they do that. Once you assume a materialist universe, that's it. You've cut off options in your storytelling, haven't you?
Oh, heck yes. I will not we will not discuss this because I will take over the rest of this show for the next hour, ranting and raving because one, I am trained as a historian. The existence of Dan Brown pisses me off. Full stop. And
Dan
he's one of
Brown.
the Dan Brown, one of those people where it's, oh, of course Christianity doesn't exist. Let me take you aside and tell you the truth. It's like, look, dumbass, I know history. It's obvious you don't. Please, bring out another book. Let me beat you to death with it. Like,
Well, I'll tell you what, we've been going about 45 minutes on this, and our main goal was to let people know about your new books and your philosophy of writing. So let's tell people one more time about it. Declan's current series out is Hellspawn. Oh, I'm sorry, St. Tommy, NYPD. That's what the series is called. The first book is Hellspawn. The second book is Death Cult. The third book is Internal Affairs. And when is the fourth one coming out, Declan?
well, the third book is Infernal Affairs. The fourth book, which is City of Shadows, should be coming out this month. Possibly late this month, but this month. Because it's going. Book 4, 5, and 6 will be February, March, and April.
That is awesome to hear.
Yes.
And reader response has been very good. I see they're all available on Kindle Unlimited, or you can buy them for $4 or $5 each, either way. And they're available from other platforms too.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody be sure, please, also to drop by a Pius Geek, which is at declanfinn.com, to see the other fiction he's got on for sale and some of his other materials. On Friday, just so everybody knows, Deflating Atheism and I are going against the CEO of Atheist Republic to talk about Atheist Republic and its nature as a hate propaganda site, because that's what we believe it is. And on Monday, John C. Wright will be with us. On Tuesday, we are going to we have something every night. And we're always talking about all of these different subjects. The intersection of politics, culture, and religion will never go away. They're always part of human experience. So knowing something about them and treating them seriously is a very good idea in your fiction. And if all you read is a certain type of fiction, maybe you should look for fiction that comes from an alternative worldview that's not the same as yours. Broaden your horizons a little bit, that sort of thing. So check out Declan Finn's work. Check out the St. Tommy NYPD series. Check out DeclanFinn.com. Here on YouTube, give us a like and a subscribe. We're trying to get our subscriber accounts up, so tell your friends or enemies. We got something every night. And oh, by the way, over on the Max Dean Esme group channel, we're going to have a philosophy bowl session for the next hour or so, starting about 20-30 minutes after we end this chat. So, and you're welcome to join if you want, Declan, or we'll just see you another time. Okay, brother?
All right. Sounds good to me.
All right. Well, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and God bless everybody. Thanks, Declan.
Oh, you're most welcome.